Back in the 1930s, Burmese pythons came to Florida from Southeast Asia as pets. After a while, it became clear that the state's climate was perfect for them to reproduce, which led to their spread all over Florida. And unfortunately, they didn't become friendly neighbors for a whole lot of native species. Between 2003 and 2011, in areas where these giant snakes live, the raccoon population dropped by 99.3%, opossums by 98.9%, and bobcats by 87.5%. Sounds like a snake disaster brought in from afar. The native snakes of Florida only make things worse. Rattlesnakes, pit vipers, coral snakes, none of these creatures are exactly friendly, and they're venomous too, which means every year plenty of people suffer painful bites. Can you guess how Florida decided to reduce the snakes' negative impact? By releasing more snakes. They literally dropped them out into the forest. Sounds crazy, but it really works. So let's see how exactly. This is the eastern indigo snake, or simply the indigo snake as it's often called. It might look smaller in the pictures, but in fact it can grow over 8 feet long. By the way, that makes the indigo snake the longest one in North America. This species is native, meaning it was here long before people ever set foot on the continent. Their range stretched from what's now South Carolina and Georgia down into Florida, covering parts of Alabama and Mississippi. But that was back then. Sadly, being big can protect you from other creatures, but never from humans. Historically, eastern indigo snakes depended on longleaf pine ecosystems, which are among the most biodiverse places on the continent. These forests, sustained by natural fires, gave the snakes plenty of food and good hiding spots, including homes, burrows dug out by other animals. Yes, the snakes just crawl inside, then live there and breed. Imagine, longleaf pine forests once covered about 91 million acres across the southeast of the U.S., from Virginia all the way to Texas. And then came endless logging, which left less than 3 million acres today, just about 3% of the original range. What's more, cleared forests often turned into farmland that had to be plowed through, and that finished off the habitat and destroyed the burrows snakes use for living and breeding. Sure, 3% isn't nothing, so the habitat was still there, and snakes don't just vanish overnight. However, when there are huge distances between two habitats that these animals can't cross, the populations lose contact, and sooner or later they die out. Right at the beginning of the video, we already mentioned rattlesnakes, which are quite a serious problem. Back in the 1950s to 70s, people declared war on these venomous pests, carrying out fumigation or smokeouts. Gasoline was poured into rattlesnake burrows. Smoke bombs were tossed in or toxic gases were sprayed, after which the animals either died or crawled out of their hiding places. So what do indigo snakes have to do with it? Very often they share the same burrows with rattlesnakes, so they either died along with them or instead of them. One also shouldn't forget about the illegal capture for the exotic pet trade. Thanks to their calm nature and remarkable looks, indigo snakes turned into a prized item. Thousands of specimens have been taken from the wild, which only further depleted the already struggling populations. Transport also plays a role in their decline. When their habitat gets fragmented, snakes are forced to cross roads in search of food and shelter, which often ends with them being run over. All these numerous yet minor incidents together take a real toll on a species that reproduces slowly. The result? By 1978, the eastern indigo snake was officially listed as endangered in the U.S. In fact, it became the first snake to ever get a protected status. As is often the case, people came to their senses at some point. In Florida, they figured it's time to restore the population of this unusual type of snake, since they could help solve the problem with invasive snakes that bite people and kill off native animals. A large-scale project kicked off in 2017 and is a partnership between conservation groups, government agencies, and zoos like the Nature Conservancy, the Orient Society, and the Orient Center for Indigo Conservation. They picked the Apalachicola Bluffs and Ravines Preserve in northern Florida for the reintroduction. The process of reintroduction includes several steps. Snakes are raised in captivity at the Orient Center for Indigo Conservation, spending the first 2 years there, which helps them get big enough to survive in nature. Then, each year, dozens of snakes are set free in the reserve. For instance, in 2024, 41 snakes were released. Throughout the program, more than 200 snakes have been released at this location. The main achievement came in 2023 with the discovery of 2 wild hatchlings born from snakes that had been released before. This marked the first evidence of eastern indigo snakes reproducing in the wild in North Florida in more than 40 years. In other words, the released indigo snakes aren't just surviving, they're reproducing. And this can't help but please everyone involved in the project and the regular residents of Florida, since snakes in their everyday life take care of other snakes and pests while also benefiting nature. A biological weapon against other snakes. That's a fair way to describe the indigo snake. The thing is, over a long evolution, the species has developed complete immunity to the venom of local rattlesnakes, pit vipers, and other dangerous species. In other words, the indigo snake can easily eat them without any consequences. However, first, those venomous snakes still need to be eaten, and the indigo snake, of course, handles it. Big size comes in handy here. The species is one of the true snake giants of North America, so dealing with smaller venomous creatures is no problem. During the hunt, the species relies on its powerful jaws to grab its prey and immobilize it, then swallow it whole. And yes, the indigo snake doesn't use any venom. Its own physiology does the job. That means people don't even need to worry about a venomous snake eliminator crawling onto their property and biting someone. So what we have here is a natural regulator of venomous snakes that's harmless to humans. And its survival is really important for Florida residents. Things get more complicated with the Burmese pythons that were introduced in Florida. Since this species isn't native, the indigo snake just doesn't have any special adaptation to deal with the python's main feature, their huge size. As we said, the indigo snake grows to about 8 feet long, maybe a bit more, and weighs only 11 to 13 pounds. But the Burmese python can reach 16 to 19 feet in length and weigh up to 10 times more than its rival. The record-breaking python caught in the Everglades in 2023 measured 19 feet and weighed around 123 pounds. Back in 2012, there was even a specimen found that weighed 165 pounds. So clearly, the indigo snake is no match for a python. And here, one might say that indigo snakes don't really help in controlling these invasive giants. But in fact, indigo snakes do have one trick up their sleeve. They eat young pythons that haven't yet grown to their massive size. And that's population control too. So our heroes today are without a doubt doing Florida and all the animals eaten every single day by this invasive species a serious favor. Besides, you don't really think indigo snakes only eat other snakes, do you? Their diet includes absolutely everything they can physically handle, rodents included. With some species, by the way, Florida has long been waging a real war. One of them is the cotton rat. Although it plays an important role in the natural ecosystem in places where its numbers aren't kept in check, this rodent can turn into a pest that makes life difficult both for farmers and for people who have nothing to do with agriculture. This animal is known for reproducing very quickly and eating just about anything. Its diet includes plant stems and leaves, as well as seeds and fruit, which can cause serious damage to crops. In particular, the cotton rat is notorious for damaging crops like cotton, corn, peanuts, and sugarcane. In fields where their numbers are high, these rodents can wipe out a large share of the harvest. In addition, the cotton rat is a health risk for humans because it carries viruses, the most well-known being the Black Creek Canal virus. Although not every rat is infected, this species serves as the main reservoir of the virus in North America. The virus gets passed on to humans through contact with the rodent's urine, feces, or saliva, and also by inhaling dust that contains their droppings. After that, a person's body may develop, for example, a severe lung syndrome, which in some cases ends in death. That's why the cotton rat's considered a serious health hazard in areas where it's found, and natural predators like the indigo snake help keep its population in check and, in turn, reduce the chance of diseases spreading. Apart from these rodents, the snake also does a great job with mice, rats, and other creatures that harm farming and can spread disease. In general, the indigo snake isn't just useful to people, but an animal that plays a crucial role in the ecosystem. It keeps other species' numbers in check. If that kind of controller just isn't there, certain species might become way too numerous. And that's far from a normal situation. Entire ecosystems can be ruined just because even a single native species spreads excessively. And if a whole bunch of species grow out of control at the same time, like what happened after the indigo snake disappeared, you can't expect anything good. It's no wonder this reptile species is called keystone, meaning the indigo snake impacts the ecosystem way more than its numbers would suggest. That said, the benefits of the indigo snake don't stop there. Surprisingly, it can also be useful to ecologists and everyone else keeping an eye on the health of ecosystems. Snakes, and especially a species like the eastern indigo snake, are very sensitive to changes in their surroundings. They need large, untouched stretches of forest to live, and can't survive in fragmented or heavily altered landscapes. If the indigo snake is present in an ecosystem and its population is stable, it's a sure sign that the habitat's in good shape. Food is plentiful, and there are plenty of natural shelters. Scientists use the presence of indigo snakes as an important indicator for gauging the effectiveness of conservation programs and the overall health of forest ecosystems. Its disappearance is a worrying sign, while its return is a symbol of successful nature restoration. And there are increasingly more of these symbols, not just in Florida. For example, in Alabama, they're also working on bringing back the snake killers to their natural habitats. The primary spot for reintroduction is the Conecuh National Forest down in the southern part of the state. And just like in Florida, a lot of people are involved. Ever since it kicked off in 2010, the Snake Recovery Program has been a joint effort of different groups, including the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, plus nonprofits like the Orient Society and various zoos. Can you see how much people care about getting the species back? It should be noted that as part of the reintroduction program, they don't simply drop snakes into the woods. As you remember, the habitat of indigo snakes has suffered a lot from deforestation and other human impacts, which is why they also focus on bringing back the longleaf pine forest ecosystems in Alabama. When it comes to releasing snakes, it's happening quite actively. More than 200 snakes have been released since the program began, so the project can already be considered successful. It has significantly increased the number of indigo snakes in Alabama, but another key milestone showing the program's success was also reached. In 2019, the first snake born in the wild in Alabama for over 60 years was found. So overall, the situation with indigo snakes in the southeastern U.S. is improving, but clearly all the reintroduction efforts in Florida and Alabama are just the beginning. Next up, fewer venomous snake bites, fewer rodents, and an improved ecosystem. But there's one catch. Only if people look after other animals, like the gopher tortoises. Why? Without them, a large portion of today's heroes simply won't make it. Gopher tortoises are a keystone species, and they became one for a simple reason. They dig. They dig a lot, making burrows that go several feet deep. And the tortoises' neighbors in the ecosystem have adapted perfectly to living with shelled creatures and just started living in these burrows. A classic example of natural commensalism, where one or even several species benefit from another species without harming it. And then the indigo snakes show up. They live in the gopher tortoise burrows too. For most of this snake species, the burrows serve as a refuge from Florida's extreme weather, shielding them from both the scorching summer heat and the rare but deadly winter freezes. On top of that, these tortoises' shelters give them a hiding spot during fires. All in all, it's safe to say that without the homes made by tortoises, indigo snake populations simply wouldn't survive. So the snake's fate is inseparable from that of the gopher tortoises, but here's the problem. Life is far from easy for the burrow-building tortoises these days. First, they're dealing with habitat fragmentation and destruction. Historically, these tortoises lived in vast pine forests with longleaf pines and sandy dunes. However, with the state's population growing fast and construction booming, people keep turning their lands into neighborhoods, roads, and shopping centers. As a result, entire populations end up isolated from each other, which not only makes it harder to find a mate, but also increases the risk of dying while trying to cross a road. Another serious problem is disease. Gopher tortoises suffer from upper respiratory infections, which can be deadly and spread from one tortoise to another. Infected tortoises, especially those moved during rescue operations, can spread the infection to healthy populations. State authorities are dealing with the problem, but the disease continues to affect tortoise populations. Predators are also around, and they're a bigger threat to tortoises than to indigo snakes. While the adults, thanks to their tough shells, are almost invincible, their eggs and newborn hatchlings become easy prey. Natural predators like raccoons, foxes, skunks, and snakes actively raid nests and eat the freshly hatched tortoises. However, right now the biggest threat comes from invasive species that aren't part of Florida's natural ecosystem. The most dangerous of them are red imported fire ants. They aggressively attack baby tortoises that have just hatched and haven't yet gotten strong enough to leave the nest. At the same time, a mass attack by the insects can have catastrophic consequences, wiping out an entire clutch, which of course has a big impact on the population. Besides the ants, the hatchlings can also fall prey to other invasive predators like feral cats and dogs. Another problem is the illegal capture of these animals for sale on the black market. Besides that, there's also a market for illegally trading tortoises as pets. Another problem is moving tortoises without the necessary permit. Florida enforces a strict law that requires getting permission to move a tortoise from a development site. Still, cases of illegal capture and release into other areas without disease screening or evaluating habitat suitability continue. Such unauthorized relocation not only harms the tortoises themselves, but can also help spread infections among healthy populations. Yes, because of all this, gopher tortoises have been on Florida's endangered species list since 2007. That means they have legal protection that's supposed to prevent illegal actions, but in reality, it's not saving the species, which raises doubts about the success of reintroducing indigo snakes that rely on tortoises. But there are other ways besides legal ones. The key strategy is protecting and restoring their habitat, since the main reason their population is shrinking is land development. Florida authorities and conservation groups like the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission are actively creating and managing large protected areas specifically for gopher tortoises. They carry out work to restore pine forest ecosystems, including controlled burns, which help maintain a healthy habitat. Tortoises are sometimes relocated from areas that face different kinds of threats. As part of this program, they're gently taken from their burrows and brought to prepared reserves that have plenty of space and suitable conditions for them to live. For instance, one of the biggest and most successful reserves is the Disney Wilderness Preserve. Over the years, thousands of tortoises have been relocated there, which has helped save them from extinction. Besides, there are plenty of smaller but just as important projects going on all over the state on lands owned by private individuals, conservation groups, and state parks. All in all, despite a number of threats, Florida's gopher tortoises really do have a future, which means the indigo snakes, keeping the state safe from dangerous pythons and other critters, have a future too.